9 days before the start of the World Cup, Austria lost their best player, not in an official match, not in a demanding preparatory fixture. They lost him during the warm-up. 6 minutes before a friendly against Tunisia was set to kick off, Christoph Baumgartner, the man holding Austria's entire attacking structure together, the attacking midfielder who had just finished the season with 17 goals and 9 assists, the player who holds the record for the fastest goal in international football history, felt a sharp pain in his right thigh while striking a ball, and just like that, Austria's World Cup changed completely before it even began. This is the story of how a warm-up injury destroyed the plans of a national team that had been waiting 28 years for this moment. And it's also the story of what it means for Argentina, who face Austria on June 22nd in Dallas. To understand the size of this loss, you need to understand who Christoph Baumgartner actually is within this team. He's not just another interchangeable midfielder. He's the player who, from the first minute to the last, connects the lines, creates danger, and converts chances. In the Bundesliga this season, he scored 17 goals and registered 9 assists for RB Leipzig. That's not the output of a squad player. That's the level of a striker at a Champions League club. For Austria, Baumgartner was exactly that, the gravitational center of their entire attack. And he wasn't just important in the present tense. He was someone arriving at the World Cup in the best form of his life. He's 26 years old. He's at his physical peak. His club, RB Leipzig, just secured a Champions League place, in large part because of him. Just weeks ago, Baumgartner himself said the timing couldn't be better for him. He was right, which is exactly why what happened on Monday night in Vienna is as cruel as it is absurd. Let's talk about how this actually happened, because the details matter. Austria were playing their final warm-up friendly against Tunisia at the Ernst-Happel Stadium in Vienna. Baumgartner was named in the starting lineup. He was warming up like any professional player does, movements, stretches, sprints, shots, and on one of those routine shots, the muscle in his right thigh gave way. No contact, no fall, nothing dramatic, just the natural motion of striking the ball during a warm-up. And that was the last shot Christoph Baumgartner took at this World Cup. Do you see the pattern? This isn't the first time in football history that a key player has missed a tournament because of an injury during the preparation phase, and every time it happens, the same inevitable question comes up: what is going on with warm-up protocols? With workload management in the final week before a tournament? Because this didn't happen in a high-intensity competitive match. It happened in a friendly warm-up, and that difference matters. Now we need to talk about what this injury does to Austria tactically. Ralf Rangnick built his national team around a very specific pressing model. The gegenpressing, that immediate pressure after losing the ball that made RB Leipzig famous in their best years. The system demands players with a very particular profile. They need the athletic capacity to press high up the pitch, but they also need the technical quality to exploit the spaces that pressure creates. Baumgartner was exactly that profile. He was the player who combined both qualities better than anyone else in the Austrian squad. Without him, Rangnick has to find a solution. And the most obvious one is Marcel Sabitzer, the Borussia Dortmund midfielder. Sabitzer was the one who scored the only goal in the win over Tunisia, the same match in which Baumgartner went down injured. His performance that night was solid, and he showed he has the level to take on more responsibility. But Sabitzer and Baumgartner are players with very different characteristics. Sabitzer is more physical, more box-to-box. Baumgartner was more creative, more vertical, more unpredictable. The difference is not a small one. And this brings us directly to what all of this means for Argentina. Lionel Scaloni and his coaching staff have spent weeks analyzing Austria. Baumgartner was, without question, the player who caused the most concern in their defensive analysis. He was the hardest to mark because his movement was unpredictable. With him gone, the problem changes in nature. Austria will still be dangerous, still be intense, still apply that exhausting press. But the risk of a player with individual class unbalancing the match has been considerably reduced. Remember this when June 22nd comes around in Dallas, because the absence of Baumgartner could be the deciding factor in that result. But before we keep talking about Argentina, there's something that very few outlets are saying clearly enough. Austria deserve a more honest analysis than they're getting. This is not a filler team that showed up at the World Cup just to make up the numbers. Austria qualified as the unbeaten leaders of their European qualifying group. With 19 points from 8 games, they knocked out Italy to get here. Under Rangnick, they have completely transformed their footballing identity. They are no longer the gray national team that vanished from international football for nearly 3 decades. They are a team no opponent wants to face. And that is precisely the tragedy of what happened to Baumgartner. because Austria arrived at this World Cup with more reasons to believe than at any edition since 1998. They had a clear system, a world-class coach, players in peak form, and a team environment that Rangnick had spent years building. And now they have to reconfigure all of that in less than 2 weeks. The detail nobody is calculating properly. FIFA allows squad changes up to 24 hours before the first match. That debut is June 17th against Jordan at Levi's Stadium in San Francisco. Among the possible replacements being mentioned are Marco Gruhl of Werder Bremen and Dejan Ljubicic of Schalke. Neither of them comes anywhere close to Baumgartner's level, and that's not a criticism of them personally. It's simply acknowledging that replacing your best player at the last moment before the most important tournament in the world is structurally impossible. And here is the part that I find most revealing about all of this: Rangnick's reaction. The Austrian head coach is known for being a cold, analytical manager, not given to public displays of emotion. And yet, when he spoke about Baumgartner's injury, his words were straightforward. He said it was very bitter news for Christoph and for the whole team. He didn't try to downplay it. He didn't give the standard speech about the next man being ready. He acknowledged the blow. And coming from Rangnick, that says everything. But the story doesn't end there, because at the same time that Austria were digesting the worst possible news, confirmation also arrived that David Alaba, the captain, had left the same match with muscle discomfort that had initially worried everyone. And the good news, his MRI scan ruled out any serious injury. Alaba will be available. Austria breathed again, because losing both Alaba and Baumgartner simultaneously would have been nothing short of catastrophic. Alaba is the piece that gives Austria their defensive authority. At 33, with a career that includes years at Real Madrid, he is the leader on and off the pitch. His presence is irreplaceable in terms of World Cup experience. In Rangnick's system, Alaba anchors the defense and also initiates play from the back. His clearance is the only good news from a very difficult week for Austrian football. Now let's look at Group J with everything on the table. Argentina are the reigning world champions. They have Messi in what could be his final World Cup, and they arrive as the overwhelming favorites to top the group. That doesn't change with Baumgartner's injury. Algeria have Riyad Mahrez and present an organized system capable of causing problems for any opponent. Jordan are making their World Cup debut and are the group's underdog story. And Austria, now without their best player, have to find a way to stay competitive. Austria's schedule is clear. June 17th against Jordan in San Francisco, June 22nd against Argentina in Dallas, June 28th against Algeria in Kansas City. The first game against Jordan is now more important than ever. Austria need those 3 points to arrive at the Argentina match with any margin for error, because losing to Jordan and then facing Argentina under the pressure of needing a miracle is a scenario nobody in the Austrian dressing room wants to contemplate. So what does Rangnick do now? This is the most interesting tactical question in the group. With Baumgartner gone, he can give Sabitzer more creative freedom in advanced zones. He can ask Konrad Laimer to take on more prominence in transition, or he can change the system entirely and go with 2 more physical strikers in Marko Arnautovic and Michael Gregoric. Every option carries risks, and the decision Rangnick makes over the next 2 weeks will say a lot about his ability to adapt under pressure. What is clear is that this World Cup started in the worst possible way for Christoph Baumgartner. At 26, in his first World Cup, at the peak of his career, the injury arrived in the warm-up of a friendly. No right of reply, no chance to prove himself on the pitch. For a player who holds the record for the fastest goal in international football history, 6 seconds exactly against Slovakia in 2024, who ended the season as Austria's best player, fate had a particular cruelty in store. That the biggest match of his career never even started. And that, at the end of the day, is the most tragic part of this story. Not Rangnick's tactical plans, not the analysis of what it means for Argentina, but a 26-year-old footballer who was preparing to experience the greatest moment of his career and lost it in a warm-up on a gesture he makes thousands of times at the least expected moment. Football has this cruelty, and this time it applied it to one of the most interesting players in Europe. Can Austria survive the World Cup without Baumgartner? Tell me in the comments. Because I think Marcel Sabitzer has the ability to lead this team, but without the creativity and individual unpredictability that Baumgartner brought, the road for Austria in Group J just got considerably harder. The team that arrived as the most serious European threat in the group now has to prove something very different, that the system is worth more than the individuals. And against Argentina, against Messi, that is going to be very difficult to prove.